Just a few words, please, on the parasha Shavua, which is Mishpatim. And if you notice that the parasha starts Ve'ele HaMishpatim, which means what? And these are the laws, right? What does that mean? That means not only in last week's parasha Yitro that we were given the 10 Commandments, Ve'ele, and these laws also were given also on Har Sinai. Okay, very important distinction to make. Now, up to now, for how many parashiot we read in the book of Bereshit, plus up to now Yitro, there were only about 45 or 46 commandments so far. Now, in Mishpatim this week, 53 commandments. Okay, alone in this parasha. Okay, I just want to focus on one of those concepts, if you will, and that is the concept of slavery. Now, let me ask you something. There are laws in the Torah that detail how you treat a slave. Okay? Now, let me ask you something. Does that mean that the Torah condones slavery? It promotes slavery? It allows slavery? It encourages slavery? Absolutely not.
He's a worker.
But what happened? Yes, there is a distinction between a servant and a worker, right? But what happened? The Torah put rules in place on how to ethically treat another human being, even under the condition of slavery or servitude. Why? Because back then, slavery was rampant. Everyone had slaves, and worse than that, everyone treated slaves like it was their property. And here comes Hashem and the Torah and says, no, they are not property. People are not property. They are people. Treat them with dignity. So there's a big difference between someone saying, because the rules are in the Torah, they allow for slavery. No, it doesn't allow for slavery. But if it's going to happen, this is the way you treat them, with honesty and integrity. And the Talmud even says, if the master of the slave has only one pillow to sleep on, you give the slave the pillow instead of the master keeping the pillow at night. Amazing, the degree of how we have to treat the slave. That's one concept. Now imagine if these rules were not given in the Torah. Imagine if the slavery rules were not given in the Torah. The slaves would be treated like all the other slaves, like property. So you have to understand that if you're going to be a slave, it was the dream of the slave to be the slave of a Jew, because he knew that the Jew was going to be subject to these ethical rules. That's concept number one. Concept number two is brought out by the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who says as follows. Just as when Abraham took his son Yitzchak to the Akedah to sacrifice him, and at the time child sacrifice was really rampant, Hashem comes and commands Abraham to take his son Yitzchak for the Akedah, and then at the very end says, no, don't sacrifice him. Why? A lot of people misinterpret the story, but it was actually a statement, a very strong statement by Hashem himself against child sacrifice. Human sacrifice. And Hashem is making a powerful statement here. So same thing, if you apply the exact same concept here, you can see the wisdom of the Torah and of course of Hashem, saying that the world, back then when the Torah was given, was not ready to abolish slavery. It was not ready to. But Hashem put the rules in place in the Torah that eventually humanity would grow a conscience to eventually get rid of slavery. And that slavery we only got rid of slavery less than 200 years ago in this country. Yeah. And slavery is happening all around the world even up to today. But the Torah, in its wisdom 3,300 years ago, precisely 3,333 years ago, says no, it is wrong. And if it's going to happen, this is the way you treat, and eventually humanity will come to the realization that it is wrong. And thank God America came to that realization less than 200 years ago, yet the world has still to catch up. I'm going to leave you on one final thought. It's like a pop quiz. Right? We're going to have a pop quiz. What other concept in the Torah where we see rules for the ethical treatment of something that will eventually lead to what I think what the Nevi'im and the prophets wrote of the eventual dissolution of? If you want the answer, come see me.
Prisoner.
Shavua Tov.